Morning all. A very interesting game yesterday occurred between Aronian and Svidler in the Tal Memorial 2011. Let's have a look at it. Aronian playing white played d4, and we saw the Gruenfeld defence. So this has actually in this tournament been more popular than even the Slav defence, which is evidence for my idea that really grandmasters want to get something from the opening. I don't think there's such a thing as a main line which they kind of stick to necessarily. They really want to get something from the opening, and here it seems the hypermodern approach of playing the Gruenfeld defence, which was favoured by Kasparov against Karpov in one of the World Championship rematches between the classic KK matches. That seems to be it's Svidler's favourite defence, but it seems his favouritism of this defence has carried over to some other players as well in this tournament. So here, the exponent Svidler though is set some interesting challenges now with just this system with bishop f4 and e3. Okay, so black plays c5, and I think actually there was in this line I think there was a classic Fischer-Petrosian, or rather Petrosian versus Fischer game in the World Championship candidates match leading up to the 1972 World Championship. I think Petrosian won quite brilliantly. This line with c5, so white paradoxically takes away a pawn from the centre with d takes c5, inviting this tactical move queen a5. So introducing quite a seemingly nasty pin and nasty threats, because the bishop's outside the pawn chain, unable to do something about c3 here. But this is all theory. So white played rook c1, black played d takes c4, which clears up the centre and leaves actually a symmetrical pawn structure after bishop takes c4. Once black captures this pawn, what we have is pawn structure symmetry. 4 over here and 4 over here. So we see 2 versus 2, 4 versus 4. Both bishops seemingly okay. Okay, so does white have anything from this position here, this start position? Bishop b3. So knight c6. It seems Svidler's got a comfortable position really. I can't see too much wrong with the black position. Okay, at the moment he's faced with a tactical threat, unveiling this rook against the queen, so he moves the queen out of danger. Now maybe bishop g4 is going to be a nuisance, and white has to work out if it's worth playing move h3 here against that, and also the possibility perhaps of knight h5. Bishop would slip into the h2 square now. So he does play h3, bishop f5, eyeing d3, and look at the d file. Doesn't it seem as though black has good active pieces? It seems to me, again, black should be okay. Has black fully equalised? Well, I would guess nearly. After queen e2, it looks as though black is also keen on some simplification now, playing knight e4. I think it's harmless to try and make use of the d3 square here. If rook d8, I believe e4 might be possible, but let's check that as an example. If we add Qb8 here, e4 yes is possible here, with a small advantage apparently to white if the bishop retreats. There's also a tactical move queen b4 here available for a pin on this bishop. White could just play now, apparently just supporting the pawn. If the bishop does go back, there's a small advantage to white. Anyway, so Svidler's move is to get some exchanges. Actually, he plays knight e4, and of course preventing this e4 from white. So surely now black is close to being absolutely equal. if we get an evaluation of this position, knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, is it roughly equal now? It looks as though black has a fine looking position. Okay, it is roughly equal. It's still tiny advantage given to white for some reason. But anyway, rook fd1, queen, the queen shifts to h5, which looks potentially, you know, quite dangerous, threatening to fracture white's pawns maybe as an option. But that invitation now is not taken up after bishop c2. In fact, maybe Svidler, he doesn't like giving Aronian the two bishops, because bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, say, takes. This pawn's not really on, because I think rook b1 and then rook b7 with a great game. So in this position, white has the bishop pair, and I think a move like, for example, bishop e4, actually, bishop e4, so to keep the option of rook b1 and bishop b2, attacking b7, and then the bishop is striking on that diagonal, and that will be, I think, quite pleasant for white. So basically, black doesn't want to play bishop f3, he plays bishop c2, so we've got the same kind of bishop actually now on both sides. So surely here black is again close to being really equal. Let's get an evaluation here as well. It's 0.15. It's not too much to write home about, apparently. And in fact, queen b5 was the move played here as well, as an engine recommended move as well. So queen b5 basically attacks b2, but it's not really on, because if takes, there's always rook b1 at the moment. So a4, asking queen what to do. Now knight e1, which seems to be like a passive retreat, but really actually knight d3 and then c5. The c5 square is the key square, it seems, if white wants to use the initiative on this shared c file, that something might be useful about the c5 square. Black now commits to a forcing move which commits one of the pawns, e5, so potentially we've got some weakened light squares, particularly d5 after e5, bishop g3, rook fd8, and now this knight comes in with tempo against the queen, and now c5 is made use of, so perhaps white is extending a small advantage here in this position, being able to play this next seemingly quite aggressive move, actually, queen c5. Rook takes d3 is no problem. Rook takes d3. The queen is supported by the rook. There's no horrible tactic here. This seems to be absolutely playable. So rook d6 was played, and now white extends the small kind of space advantage he might have on the queen side with b4. So this knight is actually a little bit of a vulnerable target for tempo gain and space gain with b5. Okay, so this is just slightly perhaps unpleasant for black, but there's an opportunity to intensify the pressure perhaps on the d file, and that's played now actually with this next move, rook ad8. But surely the knight on d3 is really vulnerable. Surely white cannot play b5 here, you might ask, because of rook takes d3, and the knight here is protecting the queen. But actually b5 was played, so this is an interesting position. Is white really getting away with increasing the space advantage on the queen side, gaining a tempo on the knight on c6? Why isn't there, for example, rook takes d3? Let's check this out. In the game, actually, in this position, rook d5 was played. Let's add a Qb8 here and investigate. Rook takes d3. Rook takes d3. white has actually the move rook takes d3, which represents, what does that represent really? Just an exchange transaction, because now in this position b takes c6. Now there's no deflection tactic like rook d1 check to get the queen unprotected, because white can just play king h2, or even stronger here actually there's a beautiful idea here in this variation, as this is shown, to actually sack the queen temporarily. So for check, and c takes b7 actually winning. So that's that doesn't quite work. Rook d1 check, but here. But in this position anyway, b takes c6, and white still stands slightly better, apparently, and slightly. Okay, so that's why maybe rook takes d3 is not on. In fact, Svidler plays the engine recommended move rook d5, with apparently a tiny advantage to black. But anyway, so queen c2. And now, actually, is this a suspect move? Given that the engine evaluation was slightly better for black, is this committal move now really justified? E4, because I'm thinking really that the e4 pawn could be a potential long-term target in this position to make use of as a basis for some sort of combination later. Were there other, perhaps less committal moves available to Peter Svidler here? Let's check this one out as well, actually, just for my own interest. Knight a5 is given as an alternative to e4. In fact, they're about equal now, knight a5 and e4. But knight a5 is the least committal in terms of pawn structure configuration. But if white is afforded the possibility of e4, then maybe now knight b2 and white. Oh, again, it's roughly equal. Black's even slightly better sometimes. I don't know. This may be. I have no idea really. I think this looks dead equal here, but one has a suspicion that e4 could be more double-edged than knight a5. Because that e4 pawn is going to be weak soon. So anyway, knight f4 is played, inviting an exchange of rooks, which does occur. One rook comes off, then the other rook comes off. So we have here queen, knight and bishop versus queen, knight, bishop. Does white have anything? If white does have something, intuitively it's going to be something to do with the more advanced pawns on the queen side. Are these actually an advantage or a liability? Is this pawn, by the same token, an advantage, a cramping advantage, or a liability? It does provide a pivot square knight to d3 here, which is actually made use of, knight b4, potentially to be able to support knight d3. After queen c1 though, there's an immediate threat now of queen c8 check, maybe, which could be very handy. So the king is given square g7, bishop f6. So the queen invitation is taken up to go and play the check, king g7. Now there's a slight tiny issue with the black position here. This a7 can be attacked now, and it is attacked with queen b8. So you might think no big deal, black can play a6. Is a6 a slight mistake? Again, it depends. There's a double-sided coin here all the time with these pawns. Are they liabilities or assets? Should it just be exchanged off now, leaving just the pawn on a4 against the pawn on a6 potentially, or knight takes a6, or should it be moved forward? Okay, Aronian took the decision to move the pawn forward here. Does this actually represent, from an engine point of view, a tangible advantage? In fact, was b6 the best move? I'm actually quite curious to see what a brute force analysis of the position would give here. It's actually favouring black, except for a tactical shot available to white here. Knight takes g6, but b6 is given as equal. I think b takes a is given as well, on this brief analysis, is slightly better for black, especially with knight takes a6. But a move apparently, and this is a variation I checked out earlier actually, there's a tactic here which I don't think is that effectual. Knight takes g6. The idea is to play this bishop d6 to try and just nab a pawn tactically, but I'm not sure it's such a big deal here. This might be okay for black to draw. So if we go back to this position, Aronian played b6. Now from a human point of view, this b6 could be, you know, a very dangerous pawn, because actually if there's any slip up, this pawn is going to see promotion day in 2 squares if something horrible happened. That's something to bear in mind anyway as a basis for a potential combination later. As I said earlier, also this might be a basis for a combination. So we have two possible bases for an interesting combination coming up. We've got an advanced pawn on b6 and we've got a potentially weak pawn on e4. So can Aronian muster up something based on these two factors? Well, here actually his queen is attacked again, and now queen c8. So the queen is kind of wrenched into black's position here quite annoyingly. Is it easy to evict? No, not quite, because, you know, queen d8, queen b7, that pawn has to be guarded. It's difficult to exchange off queens. Okay, so here Svidler plays h5, and now we get a move knight e2, which potentially introduces immediately the idea of actually bishop c7 to cut off the queen, protecting the pawn. And in fact this is acted on now after knight d8 protecting the pawn in advance. Bishop c7. Okay, so the pawn is not on, but the knight is attacked. So bishop takes d8, queen takes b7 would seem to be on. So this pawn is representing a major concern really now in this position. So Peter plays queen e6, inviting the exchange of queens. That's avoided with queen b8. And now we have a seemingly safe, absolutely safe move, solving the main issues to do with this pawn and b7. The move queen d7. So surely black is doing absolutely okay here after queen d7. Well, the move now afforded by the queen and bishop on a sort of battery diagonal is this move bishop e5, which potentially is going to expose some dark square weaknesses around the black king position if there's a dark square bishop exchange. Also here I don't think this queen d1 check is effective. I think because of queen d8 at the end of that, but let's just check that. Queen d1 check. Now if bishop takes, queen takes would be check. So let's just check here. I don't think this queen d1 is particularly good. King h2. So if queen takes, there's actually not queen takes. Pardon me, not queen takes d8 because bishop takes e5 check, but check. Then queen takes d8, and that's better for white. So let's go back here in this position. This is starting to get a bit uncomfortable for white now after this bishop exchange. So black played knight e6, and now these two factors are still hanging in the position, this slightly weakened pawn and this dangerous advanced pawn, and white plays for that weakened pawn now finally with knight c3, which is another benefit of this bishop e5 move. This bishop was like blocked by the bishop on e5, affording knight c3. So queen c6, okay, attacking this pawn, putting pressure on c3 potentially. At the moment it's defended, and if bishop e5, queen e5, defending the knight, so it's not a problem. White now further supports the advanced pawn on b6 by playing a5. So there's starting to be a little bit like torture now, because how does black wriggle out of this position safely? I'm fairly sure now white must have an advantage, even from an engine point of view, because we have two horrible factors still in the position. This slightly weakened pawn, and in fact a third factor, the potential of slightly weakened dark squares, because white always has the option now of a dark square bishop exchange. So the advanced pawn here, the weak pawn here, and the option of weakening the dark squares around black's king. So Svidler commits to another pawn move. Now, is it absolutely necessary? What's the engine point of view here? Has he actually slipped down here? Even from an engine point of view, it's now up to 0.24, with h4 actually being recommended. Is black in some sort of zugzwang here? He can't really easily move other pieces, except maybe knight g5. But let's see, the movement of other pieces is a potential disaster. If he moves the queen, then queen takes b7 is on. First taking on f6. Oh no, knight takes e4, even stronger, pardon me. That's not the best move in the world, queen c5. So there's hardly any other moves to suggest. I just wanted to make sure. Say queen d7, again bishop takes, and knight e4. So in this position actually, it's important for the queen basically to guard e4. Queen cannot move to either c5 or d7, so that's ruled out. Can't obviously move to e8. Can't move anywhere over here. Can it move to c4? That might just be about playable, but queen d6 apparently is giving white an even bigger advantage, and potentially there's a dropping of a pawn coming up with queen takes e4 here. Okay, with almost half a pawn advantage. So it seems to be a very tricky position for black. Can't move his king. Obviously can't move the bishop, it's pinned. So there aren't too many moves. g5, if we look at g5 just briefly, out of interest, that seems to be, that just runs into, sorry, in this position, after queen c6, a5, is g5 on as a possibility. Bishop takes, king takes, it's just a bit weakening really, check. Okay, that might, I don't know, just about be playable, but again we have this e4 pawn being harassed. So this is a tricky position, so maybe Svidler, he found it difficult and he committed now to another pawn move, h4. So we've introduced another potential weakness now in the position. These two pawns are potentially weak, and we've still got this dangerous advanced pawn here. So this is really Steinitz accumulation of advantages theory being demonstrated here, that we had a seemingly small advantage to white in the opening of this space on the queen side, which was a sort of almost a double-edged advantage, because those pawns could have turned out weak, but also there was this slightly weakened e4 pawn. Now there's another slight weakness, and it's here that Aronian elects to exchange off the dark square bishops. He plays actually bishop takes f6, and he gets in this check on h8, which drives the king to an unpleasant position now. It goes to f5. So the idea, I guess, must be that if queen takes h4, that's not possible surely because of queen takes c3. If he'd gone to e7 here, then surely queen takes h4 check would be the move. But I just want to check that actually. I don't want to take anything for granted. Knight g7, again queen h4 check. Let's just check those two possibilities to make sure, absolutely sure. If king e7, okay, queen h4 is given, okay, and if knight g7, again I guess it's queen h4, so the king is basically forced to go to f5. Okay, and we have here a critical decision. Okay, what does Aronian do here? Can he really take on h4 and leave the knight hanging on c3? For me, this represents a pivotal position for all the games in the tournament, because most of the games in the tournament are draws, and this is the highest level tournament of the entire year. So surely leaving the knight on c3 is really ambitious in the context of a sea of draws, mostly in this tournament. I don't know what you guys think of this position. I hope many of you have not seen this game before, but would you say that queen takes h4 is totally unplayable? Now I'll give you 10 seconds to either stop the video or think about it yourself just a little bit now to try and think, would you say yes or no here, or to the idea that queen takes h4 is completely unplayable. So 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, I suppose this is where the concept of a docking computer might be good, to examine absolutely forced if-then sequences, because queen takes h4 creates a forced if-then sequence, which seems to be quite spectacular actually, based on the particularly unique configuration of the pieces, particularly the vulnerability of the black king available to very forcing checks here. Queen takes h4 was actually played. Okay, so the knight's taken, and then we get a very forcing check move here. So I wonder if you can guess it if I give you 10 seconds. Turn your virtual docking computer on, looking at absolute forcing moves. By the way, also I should mention, as well as looking at outrageous forcing moves, it's also good to look at outrageous positional sacrifices, which are essentially forcing moves, but in the context of thematic positional play. So both ideas get tactical insights into position, but here there's a natural forcing move which isn't really that outrageous. Okay, I hope you can spot it. G4 check, and now there's another forcing move here, another key forcing move. I wonder if you can spot it. And the queen, we're about to see a queen on steroids here, this white queen, for what it's about to do. Remember I said about the two main assets that white had earlier was this advanced pawn and this slightly weakened pawn was a kind of virtual asset. If that's a weakness for black, it becomes white's kind of basis for combination or advantage. The white queen now plays check. This has to be blocked, otherwise queen takes c3. So f6, and then the queen goes to the other end of the board. It's a hyperactive queen. I've never seen a queen quite like this, so busy. So one of the assets is now untapped. This advanced pawn is now free after queen takes b7 check, and it's all running with check. To be a menacing pawn now, just 2 steps away from queening. And now we see queen b8. Okay, so a knight's down, but some damage done. And maybe with queen b8, the queen is still free to support the pawn now with b7. And then maybe queen a8 or queen c8 for guiding it with b8, so that has to be taken care of. B7 seems to be a serious threat, among other things. This next move might be designed primarily against b7 from white, otherwise this queen is going to help the pawn to dock into a queen. So knight c5 stops b7. Now the busy b queen plays another check, and this time is creating a passed pawn on the other side of the board now. Virtually, after queen takes g6, all of a sudden we see the implication that this is now a dangerous pass pawn. And so I find this particularly a stimulating game and satisfying combination to play through in this very high level tournament, that actually this queen, through the knight sack, has created pass pawns on both sides of the board, which overwhelm, I think, the knight and queen potentially. Having to deal with one is okay, just about bearable. The knight's, you know, at the moment stopping immediately b7, but another one coming up, bit of a pain. I think this position is reaching absolute criticalness. The black king decides to go to c4. Is it really going in for some sort of attack? If it gets out of the way here, then maybe, you know, it's it going in for some sort of counter attack against the white king or something. But here Aronian calmly and outrageously sort of uses his other pass pawn now, h4. He's going to hang these like terrible things to try and stop on both sides of the board. The black king now goes to d3, have a very dramatic position. h5. Now this pawn is only 3 squares away from queening, and this one only 2 squares away from queening. And what is the black king doing? It's venturing in again now with king e2. So Aronian pushes the pawn even further, so they're both just 2 squares away now. Okay, but now, is this the start of the counter-attack? Queen c4. The king is actually attacking some squares which might be of use, and supporting maybe queen c1 to f1. But Aronian is not concerned here, it seems. Also, there might be time, one would imagine, for knight d3 potentially being useful. But h7 really putting black on the knife edge. He played actually king e1 here, which does provide the threat, it would seem, of queen f1, and maybe aiming at least for a perpetual even more. But Aronian here just plays queen takes f6, and this causes Svidler to resign. Maybe he realizes that queen f1 check is futile. If king h2, this pawn is queening. There's no useful checks here. Could Svidler have improved this? Let's get an engine point of view just on these last few moves here. After h7, king e1, or even here, pardon me, queen c4, h7. Was this actually assessed as hopeless, this position? Yes, because the check, even knight d3 is not enough. It's too slow. Once white queens, knight takes f2. Okay, there's some serious threats going on, but white's extra queen is pretty useful here. This check is not apparently harmful, because the king can crawl out like this and it'll be okay. Wow, I'm impressed. I don't know about you guys, by this creation of 2 outside pass pawns from sacrificing a knight here. This is deep docking computer stuff combined with strategic, you know, creation of pass pawns. So slower moving target advantages, pawn structure based advantages, but based on very good calculation. So allowing this knight to be sacked, the queen very, very busily creating one outside pass pawn, then going to create another pass pawn on the other side of the board, factoring in king's safety, not being too critical, just supporting f2 here against this queen f1, and that's enough. Okay, wow. Let's have a look at this game in overview and summary. So the Gruenfeld is broken down in this game just gradually, in a sort of Steinitzian way. The accumulation of small advantages. Black seem to be, quite close to equalising. So Svidler's had I think 2 losses now in Gruenfeld. So one was earlier against Ivanchuk, so this is the second loss. But again, he almost seemed to have a totally equal position. But there are some players in this tournament, like Ivanchuk and Aronian, who are very, very determined to grind out wins if needed. So Queen C1. Now this extra, what is the advantage here? The space advantage of the pawns and the slight weakness of E4. So it's amazing that something is actually made of that. Pressure has been put now on B7 that was leading to this battery which facilitated bishop E5, putting more pressure on black, and now leading up to a knight sack, which has the combinatory idea strategically of the creation of 2 outside passed pawns now. So this knight sack here, brilliant knight sack, I think you'll agree. Queen takes h4. I think this could lead Aronian to be one of the highest rated players in the world after this tournament. He's doing so well now. Well, only a small lead, but in such a tournament to be leading it means the top of the FIDE rating list is going to change. So the creation of 2 outside passed pawns puts black in a totally critical state, unable to stop them. Final move, Queen takes f6, seals black's fate, not minding Queen f1 check. I hope you enjoyed that. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks so much.